This woman is one of the most hated people in America right now. This is Shanda Vanderark, and her court case has been in the news a lot lately because she's being recognized as one of the most notoriously depraved mothers in history. The lawyers in this case have even said it's the most difficult case they've ever worked on. So let's talk about this story. Just a reminder that I tell a lot of dark, true crime stories on this channel, so viewer discretion is advised, but follow along if you want to hear more. So let's start with a little bit about Shanda Vanderark. Shanda works as a judicial clerk. She was even in the process of becoming an attorney. She freelanced as a dog trainer, and she has 5 biological children. 3 of her children lived in Oklahoma with their dad, and she lived in Michigan with her 2 other children. She got remarried to a man named Adam, and he was the stepdad to their 2 children. But then 2 things happened that kind of turned her into a monster. In early 2021, she got a call from her husband saying that she needed to resume the care for their 15-year-old son, Timothy. Timothy had special needs. He's reported as having high-functioning autism, ADHD, bipolar disorder, and several other conditions. Apparently, Timothy's biological father was unable/unwilling to care for him and said if Shanda didn't take him, he was going to submit him over to, state child services. So they relocate Timothy back to Shanda's care, so she is now caring for her 3 biological children. But then the second thing happens that really causes the wheels to fall off in her life. Her husband, Adam, has a stroke. And it's significant enough for him to have to move out of the house with his parents so that they can take care of him. So Shanda Vanderark found herself as a single mom who works 2 jobs. One of her kids has special needs, and I think she really hated her life. Correction, I think she really hated her son Timothy. She never expressly says so, but in all of her testimony and text messages, you can tell that she really dislikes and resents that she has to care for him. So let's talk a little bit about her son Timothy, because it's his profound mistreatment that she's on trial for. Timothy only lived with his mother for a 1.5 years, but things started to get terrible really quickly. Like I said, Timothy had some mental health disorders that required some additional help, and I guess it could cause some disruptive behavior. But in the time that Timothy stayed with his mother, Shanda Vanderark didn't take him to a doctor, didn't let him go to school, and didn't let him go outside. No, Shanda Vanderark decided to take matters into her own cold-blooded hands, took away Timothy's human rights, and turned her home into a prison. Shanda Vanderark is an evil mother. Let's talk a little bit about how she ran her house. This is Shanda's oldest son, Paul. He worked as a dishwasher at Applebee's, and he and Shanda had opposite schedules, so one of them was always at home caring for the kids. I use the term care loosely. So Shanda claimed in court that her son Timothy was sneaky and deceitful. Like he would wake up in the middle of the night, could get loud. But the things that seemed to piss her off the most was him being sneaky and deceitful, especially sneaking food. Shanda made the decision to block Timothy's access to food by putting locks on the freezer, the fridge, and the pantries. Now, it's in every animal's biology not to let ourselves starve. People have gone so far as to eat leather and tree bark just to satiate their hunger. Sometimes Timothy managed to break in to get food. But just to show you how desperate he was for food, the things he were eating were awful. Shanda said he once ate a 2-pound bag of frozen chicken nuggets while they were still frozen, and an entire pound of raw hamburger. It was a cycle he couldn't win because he was starving, so he had to steal food, but then he'd be punished. Timothy's punishments were exceptionally sadistic. First off, Timothy had a bunk bed that he shared with Paul, but like some demented version of Harry Potter, they forced him to sleep in a closet under the stairs that they referred to so lovingly as the small room. Put cameras and motion detectors everywhere in the house to monitor his movement constantly. He had to sleep there, blue tarp as his blanket, and he was forced to spend hours of his time on his knees with his arms over his head as punishment if he ate something. If Timothy had to use the washroom, he was timed. He was given 2 minutes maximum, otherwise he was in adult diapers the whole time. Another form of punishment was that he was force-fed bread soaked in hot sauce. This is not regular hot sauce, this is like liquid fire. This would be the last sauce they use in Hot Ones. Sometimes they'd just pour the hot sauce straight into his mouth. Side note, in court, Shanda Vanderark claimed that Timothy loved hot sauce, so it had to be hot enough to make sure that he actually felt it. She is such a piece of shit. Other forms of punishment included being forced to run up and down the stairs for hours while being chased by Paul, and he would be forced to sit in ice baths. And his hands would be bound in there because, per Shanda's words, he wouldn't want him to be too comfortable. By this point, Timothy is so weak and malnourished he can't stand up on his own, and his brother Paul even said he looked skeletal. Which brings us to the final chapter in this story. Shanda Vanderark's son, Timothy, was found unresponsive July 6th, 2022. He was 15 years old and he only weighed 69 pounds. Timothy stopped breathing and passed away by himself in the small room. So Shanda calls 911. And when the police arrive, Shanda tells them that Timothy had been on a hunger strike, and it had gone horribly wrong, and they just found him like this. But as the investigation progressed, there was so much damning evidence that revealed that she was very aware of what was happening in the house, and she was the one driving the ship. And that her son Paul was really the enforcer of her will. Paul pled guilty to the charges against him, and he decided to fully cooperate and testify against his mother. And his position on why he did this was basically that he was following orders. He likened it to something like Stockholm Syndrome, and that he just wanted to please his mom, and that maybe he just didn't love his brother enough. Shanda Vanderark did take the stand, and her defense is pretty unbelievable. Her main defense was that she just didn't remember doing those things. That was because she had a number of mental ailments like OCD and sensory processing disorder, but mostly PTSD following her husband's stroke. And that would cause her to have blackouts in her recall ability. She also blamed her son Paul for a lot of it too. Probably the most noteworthy moment in this trial is when she pretends to dry heave when they show her a picture of Timothy's body the day before he passed away. She really is ridiculous. They also had to stop court when she claims she was having a panic attack when they were reading the text exchange between her and Paul, because apparently she didn't remember saying any of those things. Shanda Vanderark was found guilty of murder. The jury only deliberated for an hour. She's been sentenced to life in prison. This really is one of the most horrific cases of child neglect and mistreatment I've ever heard. Her family will never be the same again. She ruined 2 of her sons' lives. Except one lost his life and the other is damaged for life. She absolutely deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison. Thank you for sticking around. I know this was a long story. I'm going to leave you with a moment of Shanda Vanderark's testimony that seems to sum up this case really well.
Ms. Vanderark, isn't it true? Timothy had just become nothing more than an annoyance for you, and he wasn't even a human being in your eyes anymore.
That is absolutely not true.